It's GOAT time. Who is the greatest MMA athlete of all time? In this video, we will talk about the big three, Khabib, Jones, and GSP, and evaluate who's the GOAT, the MMA GOAT. The greatest MMA fighter of all time. Now, the GOAT discussions are some of the toughest discussions in any sport. Why? Who the hell knows that how will one fighter or one athlete respond in another generation? And that's why it's the most difficult. Now, if there's a fighter fought in the 70s, 80s, 90s, how would they react today? Nobody knows. But in this video, I'm going to make an attempt to compare three of the greatest fighters in my opinion, Khabib, Jon Jones, and GSP. But before we move on to that, there's going to be honorary mentions to Mighty Mouse Demetrius Johnson, Kamaru Usman, and of course Amanda Nunes. They made it to the top 6 of my GOAT list. So we're going to have a 100-point evaluation criteria spread across 6 different parameters. So number 1 would be win and winning streak. We'll give 20 points maximum to this. Number 2, the level of competition. What are they competing against? Another 20 points. Number 3, title defenses. One of the most difficult things to do in the MMA world is not to just win the title, but defend your title. So we'll give 25 points to title defenses. Technical skills, how a fighter is on the ground, on the mat, jiu-jitsu, wrestling, stand-up games, so on and so forth. 20 points for technical skills. And of course, the last one, entertainment factor. Entertaining the crowd is one of the most important things. Not all fighters are entertainers, but I'm going to give 15 points to that. The last thing I would say is that if any fighter has had any performance enhancement drug issues, PED issues, we're going to deduct 10 points there. And that's how we will rate the 3 fighters on a 100-point criteria. All right, so the 3 fighters we're going to evaluate are Khabib Nurmagomedov, Jon Jones, and Georges St. Pierre. The first one, Khabib the Eagle from Dagestan. All right, so of course, Khabib competed in the lightweight division. He retired recently, not so long back. He had a perfect record, amazing wrestling, known for really his ground and pound and really smashing his opponents. Let's see how he did on our criteria. So the first criteria, win and winning streak. Of course, we know Khabib was undefeated all the time. He was absolutely dominant. 29-0 overall, 13-0 in the UFC. Nothing can take away any point on the winning streak criteria. So all 20 points to him on the winning streak. Number 2, level of competition. Well, Khabib fought in an era where his weight class was so difficult. It was the hardest weight class. It is rather the hardest weight class in the UFC. And he dominated his entire weight class. Like smashed every single fighter he fought. This weight class was full of bad. So all 20 points on the level of competition. So number 3, title defenses. Now the thing with Khabib is that he only fought a title fight 4 times and defended his title thrice. This is, even though he dominated these 3 fights, actually if you look at the history of UFC and the legendary champions, they've defended their titles far more than Khabib did. And of course he retired early and he made a promise to his mother that he will not fight again. That were the reasons, but I will have to dock 5 points here and give him maybe about 20 points because he did not win as many or defended as many times his title as some of the other fighters. The next one is technical skills. Khabib had amazing technical skills, great submission game, of course phenomenal wrestling, amazing fight IQ, fight control, his clinch, even his jabs. But of course there were some holes in his games as well. His stand-up game was not as good. And of course, he was also a little exposed in the Justin Gaethje fight where he was not able to defend the kicks as well. So I would give him 15 points on the technical skills. The last, of course, is the entertainment factor. Now this goes kind of both ways. So there are people who did not actually love Khabib's style because it was always on the mat. These are people mostly who are not really hardcore fans of the sport. They don't really understand the sport, but they're critical to the sport, don't get me wrong. Unless the casual fans, the sport can never become big. So the casual fans love when people are just punching and stand-up game, and Khabib wasn't great on the stand-up side. I personally loved his style, but of course some fans believe that he was boring. So I'm going to give him 10 points, and only because he dominated on the mat and not necessarily standing up. Khabib never had any PED issues, so his total GOAT score is 90 points. So the second fighter we're going to focus on is Jon Jones. Before we get on to his analysis, I want to say we're going to just focus on what he did inside the octagon and not outside. There's a lot of hate on Jon Jones. I personally also feel that he could be better behaved in general, but we're not going to talk about that and we're not a moral police on that. So let's just focus on his fighting. So Jon Jones, Johnny Bones, of course, one of the best fighters ever. He competed in the light heavyweight division. Rumors are that he's going to make it to the heavyweight, and let's see how he performs in the next few years. He's obviously been highly inactive for many years now. I really hope he can come back and fight. So in my opinion, Jon Jones was one of the perfect fighters, what I would call a perfect fighter. His fight IQ was just absolutely incredible. But let's see how he does on the parameters that we've set out. Number 1, wins and win streaks. Jon Jones has 21 MMA wins, 1 loss, 1 no contest. His only loss came because he was disqualified for illegal elbows. I thought that was just absolutely bullshit. They could have taken a point off, could have warned him. He got a loss. In my opinion, he has a perfect record. He has never lost, and that's why he gets 20 points in his wins and win streak parameter. Number 2, level of competition. Now, this thing people don't really understand about Jon Jones. He's actually fought some of the toughest fighters across different generations. Not a lot of fighters can claim that they've actually beaten different fighters across generations, but Jon Jones has. So if you remember the older guys, older fighters like Chael Sonnen or Vitor Belfort, and some of the new ones like, I don't know, Dominic Reyes, Jones has beaten them all. And he has actually never been dominated in any fight. The only fight where I remember he had some trouble was the Gustafsson fight. But overall, highly dominant across generations, 20 points, all 20 points for dominance. The number 3, title defenses. 11 successful defenses, tied with DJ for the highest in the UFC history, youngest ever UFC champion, all 25 points. Take my points, Jon Jones, take all my points. Technical skills. Absolutely the best stand-up game I have ever seen. The best fight IQ. His distance management, like he knew exactly where the fighters were. His kicks and elbows. He used to actually manage the distance between him and the opponent with his kicks. Like what IQ this guy had. Amazing ground and pound game. Maybe a little bit of a hole when it comes to a little bit of his wrestling. If you look at how UFC or MMA has overall evolved, in the new generation of fighters, if he finds a big wrestler, he might have some gaps there. So that's probably the only area. So I'd give 15 points on the technical skills to him. Now, entertainment factor. Fans just loved his aggressive style, his innovative style, his bad boy image. Of course, there was lots of controversy outside the octagon, and the love of the fans dramatically reduced over the years because of those. But when he was at his peak, when he was focused, when he was in the octagon, really performing, his entertainment was top notch. 15 points there. The only issue that Jon Jones had is that he had PED issues. Now, of course, I know UFC's tried to cover that up and we don't know really what happened in some cases. But there's always kind of this asterisk or question mark around whether Jon Jones is the greatest of all time because there was kind of some PED issues there. So I'm going to deduct 10 points here, and his overall score, unfortunately, will be less than what I believe he deserves. It's 85 points. Number 3 fighter, GSP, Georges St. Pierre. Georgie boy, the Canadian professional MMA athlete, probably one of the most loved athlete in Canada and one of the most loved MMA fighter across the world. Now, the thing with GSP was that he fought in 2 different divisions and became a champion in each of those, welterweight and middleweight. Phenomenal record. Now let's evaluate him across our parameters. Number 1, wins and win streak. GSP had a 13 win streak, which was the second most in UFC history. There was a period of 10 years where he was kind of unbeaten. So he would get all 20 points in this parameter. Number 2, the level of competition. Just like Jon Jones, GSP fought fighters across generations. He defeated some of the greatest fighters in the sport and became the champion in multiple weight categories. So he returned after 4 years. I don't know if you remember those guys. He returned after a huge gap of 4 years and then became a champion again. So take my points again, GSP, 20 points there. Title defenses, he had 12 title fights that he won, 9 title defenses, double champion, all 25 points. Now, the next parameter is technical skills. In my opinion, GSP was one of the most complete fighters to ever compete. I mean, I don't know if you guys remember his Superman punch. I mean, phenomenal. He was relentless in his ground and pound. He had excellent takedown timings, excellent technique on the ground, on the mat, like absolute phenomenal technically. And I think a lot of people not just look at him as an MMA fighter, but he was one of the most complete athlete in general. How he looked, how he trained, his mentality. 20 points, all 20 points for his technical skills. The last parameter is entertainment value. Now, I personally really enjoyed watching GSP, every single fight of his, but he faced some sort of criticism for not being like a finisher. I mean, at the end of the day, the guy finished 14 fights, but I don't know what the crowd really wants. Of course, the crowd in Canada loved him, but there was criticism around his entertainment for the crowd, especially for the casual fans. So I'll dock a little bit of points here, and he gets 10 points instead of 15 on this factor. Of course, GSP never had any PED issues, so no deduction there. And he gets 95 points. In my opinion, GSP, greatest athlete in the MMA of all time. I really, really hope he can come back one last time. I know age is not on his side, but I would hope that he comes back one last time. Maybe fight Khabib. Can that happen? GSP versus Khabib. And I will eat my words if Khabib beats him and Khabib becomes the GOAT. But in my rankings today, GSP number 1, Khabib number 2, and then Jon Jones after that. That's my top 3 ever in the history of MMA. If you loved this video, subscribe to my channel. If you only enjoyed this video, then I will settle for a like. Stay tuned for all sports content, Indian sports content, and Indian sports business content on my channel. Ciao, guys.